Hey Matt,
Hey, Michaela.
have you ever gone to a coffee stand and thought, you know what's missing? More skin.
The way that sounds, no, I've never thought of that.
Well, apparently somebody has, because today we're going to be talking about a very Washington specific thing that has since spread to some other places, but I think mostly it's still a Washington thing, a Washington special. That is the Bikini Barista.
That is definitely something that broke containment, for sure.
You think it's more popular in other places than it is here? Well, I wouldn't. It's not more popular, but do you think it's as well known in commonplace in other places as it is here?
I don't think so, actually. And yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it stayed pretty consistently. Like I know there's some places we'll get into all this. There's some places in some like cities and states who have had these sort of stands pop up, but it's not nearly as prolific as Washington.
I mean, I used to live in a place that had one down the highway, and then on the way to another town there was one. So I don't disagree with you. It's it's pretty common in especially up here in northwestern Washington.
So I am fairly confident that anybody our age and older has heard of Bikini Baristas because they had quite a time. I think when we were in high school, there was full of controversy. So Matt, what is your basic understanding of a Bikini Barista?
Well, I know that the idea is that particularly young ladies will be hired by a coffee stand, and then they will then prepare and serve coffee, especially espresso, which, yeah, that's interesting. And it was something that was common overseas, I believe, before it was in the United States. But it came here to Washington for some reason. And like I said, broke containment. Like it just got out of it.
Well, sort of, but you did kind of fail to mention the bikini part of that.
Well, yeah, and they're nude or scantily clad, let's just say.
Yeah.
I forgot the most important part.
It's sort of in the name.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go over some history of the Bikini Barista stands and when they started, how they got started, how they spread. And then we're going to go into some controversies that have surrounded it.
Controversy, air horn.
And then finally, some safety concerns.
I was going to actually, I'm glad you added that because I was wondering this ever since I saw the first one pop up near my town.
So this is a there's a lot about Bikini Baristas that can be said or that could be said that I simply cannot get to in one episode. It's a lot. And I would really like the opportunity to actually interview someone who has worked in a Bikini Barista stand because I think we'll kind of talk about it. It's kind of frowned upon in a lot of ways. It's seen as sex work, which I think there's an argument to be had that it is sex work. But because of that, there's a stigma. And then also it's really hard to find like accounts of the actual working conditions online. So
that's not suspicious.
Yeah, and so I'm interested to see like from someone who's actually worked in there what they think of it and also like their experience with safety and like what the environments are like because I think I'll touch on this later, but I think we get a biased view of it in a lot of ways because of the stigma. But anyway,
what I have found, and we can talk about it I guess later, but I've seen that it's mostly women based on women working in them, and I know that there may be ones that don't, but especially in rural Washington, I'm pretty sure it's dominate or the employees tend to be female while the ownership may not be.
Yes, as far as I know, they're all themed around women. like in names and theming. So I have not encountered a male bikini barista.
Neither have I.
Online. I don't frequent I've never been to a stand.
Hey, you never been on our Bikini Baristas?
I actually, no, I did go on our Bikini Barista, and it's a lot of promo on Reddit. So it's not anything about, like...
the working conditions in the industry itself.
Right. There's no, like, talk amongst Bikini Baristas on the pages that I found. There might be some elsewhere, but it's all promotional and NSFW pictures. And
that's fascinating. I think that's interesting.
So
let's
get into it. Let's start with the history. So bikini baristas, sometimes colloquially referred to as sexpresso and baristas.
Wait, I never heard of it.
I have never heard this either.
Of either of those.
This is according to the Wikipedia. So I don't know if that's maybe like a Gen X thing.
That sounds deeply inappropriate. Like, just starting off. Like, I would never call someone a sexpresso.
Sexpresso. I also think that maybe these are words used by people who are opposed to this sort of work.
Oh, that's a good point.
It seems like a demonizing term a little bit.
That could register as pretty inappropriate.
Anyway, bikini baristas are coffee stands where customers have their espresso exclusively served by women in very little costumes, whether that be a bikini, which is in the name, as you can tell, or lingerie, pasties, booty shorts, or other similar outfits. So this is a side note to some viewers, or listeners, I suppose, not viewers, who may live outside the West Coast where this is not common. Coffee stands are little drive-up cafes. There's typically only room for 1 or 2 people inside, and their equipment, and it's very bare bones operations, and it's always drive up. There's like no actual seating. It's just like a drive up and go coffee stand, coffee cafe. They're everywhere in Washington.
Like, and sometimes they're in the weirdest and most awkward places.
I've literally been to places where it's a single gas station parking lot and there's 2 coffee stands. Like 15 feet away from each other.
Yeah, I've seen a similar situation.
With different owners.
Yeah, 2 different owners, two different businesses, but they are literally selling coffee.
You know how like Starbucks are on every corner? It's like that. Except we also have Starbucks on every corner.
Yeah, even in the small town that I'm from, there's Starbucks and there are actual barista stands in gas stations. It's pretty crazy.
I say that because I sort of assumed that was a nationwide thing, that people had coffee stands everywhere. And then a few years ago, I was driving in Oregon with some friends from the South. I think one was from Texas and the other from Georgia. And we went up to a Dutch Bros, which is a coffee stand that I think most Pacific Northwest listeners will be familiar with. And they were like, "What is this?" And I'm like, it's a coffee stand. Like, it's a Dutch Bros. And they were like, "We do not have these where we come from. We do not have coffee stands." And that was crazy to me.
Yeah, it's in rural areas. It's pretty common in Washington to have them.
I mean, literally everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. So it's funny that they're like in rural Texas.
Rural in cities, like, it does not matter.
We are coffee addicts out here, though. So
I think the only place where we don't have coffee stands is probably the heart of Seattle.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. And you might find them in like nooks and crannies in buildings. So it's technically kind of like that in Seattle too, but not in a parking lot. That's fascinating.
So the first person to conceive the Bikini Barista stand is sort of contentious, but it seems like the most likely person to have initiated the Bikini Barista stand goes to Naughty Lottie. Sorry, I pronounced that wrong. Naughty Latte.
Naughty Lottie.
Because it's supposed to rhyme. It's spelled Natte.
Latte. Yeah.
So it's like Naughty Latte, but...
These are going to be real.
It doesn't quite rhyme.
These are going to be really inventive names, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Are we in for it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy. I can't wait.
So, Naughty Latte, I really want to rhyme it, opened in 1999 in Bremerton.
That's way
by
earlier
Mary
than...
Keller.
That is way earlier than I
Yeah,
thought.
1999,
That
dude.
is pretty early. I was assuming like 2007, 2008.
So I think there's a reason you thought that, which we'll get to, but
Okay.
that's when they very much became a part of the cultural zeitgeist, and I think a lot more opened, and I think some opened near us.
Okay.
Where we were living, and
That
I
makes
think
sense.
that might be why.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Just an important thing to note here that the Navy station is located in Bremerton, and I think that's
I'm not proud of that.
Yeah, I'm convinced that it opened there because of the Navy station. I'm sure that had much to do with it. So Naughty Latte had their baristas dress up in pink leather hot pants beginning in 2001. So the store coffee stand opened in 1999, but by the time they were doing Bikini Barista stuff, it was in 2001, which is still pretty early.
Never forget.
Okay. I guess hot pants is a way people refer to short shorts. It's not like in my lexicon, but I think it's like a Gen X thing. A lot.
I never even heard.
Have you ever heard hot pants? I've heard it, but I don't use it. But I think it just means like booty shorts.
Oh, it's the short shorts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Booty shorts is probably like the millennial Gen Z equivalent.
I've heard that. I have never heard it called hot pants. I will say 2001, and I joked a little bit earlier, but, the coffee stand's got to support the troops somehow.
Well, this is how, apparently. So actually this uniform, so the bikini leather booty shorts, is very tame.
Do you think that they paid for the booty shorts? Do you think they made them pay for it themselves? The employees?
That's a good question. They probably supplied them.
Because they're kind of hard to get,
Yeah, it's like a uniform. I think they all match exclusively. Right. So I think it was like...
I feel like that's a way... I would feel less bad if that was the case, instead of like, you have to bring your own, you have to buy your own equipment and be a coffee barista.
So you'll notice that they didn't actually wear bikinis. They were just wearing booty shorts.
Yeah. Well, that's different.
Yeah. So very tame by modern standards. The next one was Cowgirls Espresso, which opened in 2003. In Tequila. It didn't start as... Is there a Navy base in Tequila?
No.
Okay.
No.
And that one also didn't start as a bikini barista stand explicitly, but then there was a heat wave. And that's when they began a bikini promotion on Wednesdays. And then it was so popular and so successful that they had more theme days, and they continued that trend.
Who would have thought climate change would have played a factor in this?
Making everything more sexy.
Hot, heavy.
So this was the first instance where they actually used bikinis, as the name implies, but not the first time that the business model was used of selling sex along with your coffee.
Okay.
So by 2007, Bikini Baristas had gained international attention.
Okay, that's...
Yes. And so many more stands began opening with the express purpose of being bikini barista stands with themed names. Some of these names I have for you, Matthew, are so good. Are you so ready?
What do we got?
Pika Brew.
Oh my, no.
Java Jigglers.
Oh, that's nasty sounding.
Yeah, that one's probably the worst. There's also Java Jugs.
That's gross.
Espresso Gone Wild.
That's clever. I do like that one. It's classic.
Sweet Spot, which I feel like does not really portray that you're a bikini barista stand.
That could be a cookie stand's name.
That's what I'm saying.
That could be anything. That could be a bakery, yeah.
Dosey Dough, which I think is one we see very often.
Yeah, we see that every time we pass through.
Foxy Lady Espresso.
I know that one, actually.
And Fantasy Espresso. I know a few of these.
Are they paying royalties to Mariah Carey?
I don't think Fantasy is trademarked by Mariah Carey.
She needs to get in on that action. Licensing.
The ones I'm most familiar with that I see the most, probably just because of the area I live in, and not necessarily because they're the most popular, though that could be a factor. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Cowgirls, I see a lot.
Yeah.
Dosey Dough, I see.
I guess.
I think Foxy Lady, I see.
We pass by Foxy Ladies quite a bit.
So those are the ones I see the most often.
I have one that's off the top of my head that there was one that had drama, And then there was one that's on the way to where my family's from, and it's like in the middle of nowhere, and yet it is.
It's a do-si-do, right?
No, it's a ladybug.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, but it's in the middle of nowhere.
I think it doesn't matter that they're in the middle of
they
nowhere.
Literally, I mean, it's right next. The thing is, it's right next to a logging mill. So that totally makes sense how it still makes
I think
money.
actually the middle of nowhere thing really aids
Helps
them
it.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because they're probably going for like hard, like manual labor guys.
Tough guys.
Those are probably
guys
the
who want to
ones that are
see a little
frequenting.
of that.
Not to stereotype, but I do think that's true.
What will you get catcalled and you get your coffee?
No, I mean these are consensual for the most part, so
Well, I'm saying the guys who would catcall a person would be the same guy who goes to a Bikini Barista,
I mean,
but that's speculation.
there's probably overlap there, yeah.
Yeah, that's a Venn diagram for sure.
Okay, so as you can tell, a lot of these are cowgirl related, which I think is also plays into what we just pointed out, that these are mostly in rural, or not mostly, but there is a lot in rural areas.
And even developed, I would say even up to Everett.
Yeah.
Even though Everett is
there's a lot in Everett.
Yeah,
We'll
even though
Everett
is a city, it's very like rural around Everett. So it's like city, then the country. Like the suburbs are very thin. Like the strata of suburb around Everett is so thin that you could have people who live out in the country come into Everett for work. And they are from rural areas.
I think we have a little bit of a bias too about like, because we don't really go south to like Tukwila area very often, so we don't see them as often, and like we're from more rural places, so we are more familiar with those.
Yeah, it's true.
So over the years, the Bikini Barista craze has moved out of the state. Though I do think, again, like we said at the beginning, it's probably most commonplace here in Washington. If someone were to say Bikini Barista to someone, that person would know exactly what they're talking about.
Right.
I think if we were to go to New England and do the same thing, they probably wouldn't know what we were talking about.
They have Dunkin' Donuts everywhere. They're fine.
And we have Starbucks everywhere. It
but
doesn't change
different
anything
than Starbucks.
I do think that I didn't look this up, but I would be curious to know what the coffee consumption per state is, and if Washington is one of the highest.
Oh, it's for sure one of the highest.
And it also might be because we don't get any vitamin D.
Top 5. I skip top 10. Top 5. Washington's probably.
Why don't you Google that for me while I?
Yeah.
Bikini Barista stands have opened in places like Raleigh, Aurora, Colorado, Portland, Ohio, Tampa, Maryland, Georgia, Las Vegas, Texas, and Missouri. The ones I'm surprised about are Georgia, Texas, and Missouri. Maybe less so Missouri, but I'm definitely surprised that Texas. I mean, maybe not. Like, it depends, I guess, where they're from or where they're located. And if they buy into that cowgirls espresso, then, or cowgirls aesthetic, maybe it's very popular.
Yeah, that's a real good point.
What do you think about Raleigh? Do you think that's surprising? It's a college town, right?
Yeah, it's a college town. I don't think it's out of question. I mean, any place where people are burning in the candles, but I feel like this is a specific kind of consumer. That's the thing to me that's interesting, is that it's a specific kind of coffee consumer, because I don't feel like you're bringing your girl to the Bikini Barista.
No, I mean, I think it's not exclusively single men, but men who come alone, I should say. But I imagine that a majority of it is. Yeah,
probably.
Did you find out?
This says that Washington and Massachusetts are number 1 and 2.
It probably changes often, because this one that I'm looking at doesn't even have us in the top 10.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I can't prove it one way or the other.
Anyway, probably not very scientifically measured.
Yeah, they should be measuring based off of import into the state lines, but
Bikini Barista stands, as you might imagine, don't just serve coffee, but they also serve up some hot controversies.
Oh yeah, I know about this.
Do you like that?
Drama alert.
So here we're gonna get into some controversies. First, the thing you probably suspect, which is the general anti-sex work sentiment that people have. As you can imagine, not everyone was happy to have these businesses in their area, and many cities have threatened to shut them down over the years, especially when they were first gaining popularity in the early, I guess, late 2000, 2007, 2008. This is why I think everybody our age and older know about these, like they're very notorious among our age groups, because in this time period, it was everywhere. It was so talked about in 2007, 2008. It was constant news stories about bikini barista stands and how they should be regulated or should not be regulated, and how they're sex work or they're not sex work, etc.
It's funny because a lot of Western Washington towns don't have like strip clubs or anything like that. So the fact that like essentially the people who are now Moms for Liberty were attacking like people who opened these stands, and now they're on to like doing bookstore stuff, is like shows you just how much they gave up in between. Because I remember this being a big issue in Oak Harbor for sure.
So there are a lot of cities who complained about the uniforms barista used, mostly because they weren't actually bikinis a lot of the time. A lot of the time baristas would be wearing lingerie or less than lingerie. Some would only wear pasties and a G-string, which is against apparently zoning. I say here it's against zoning code. It's not explicitly true. It could be if it's a little complicated, and I think I'm going to explain it a little bit better later. So anyway, we'll get to it. Places that did this were told that they must require baristas to wear a bikini or lingerie. So no more pasties, no more just G-strings. They had to wear a little bit more.
Which was kind of wild that they were getting away with that, in my opinion. That is kind of wild.
So a particular hotbed of this stuff was Snohomish County, which is where I grew up.
The hotbed.
So the way they tackled this was by enforcing a dress code, or, this is what I was referring to, or stands could be punished and rezoned to be adult entertainment, which would mean that they would have to be rezoned. And would have stricter zoning restrictions and rules requiring all customers to be adults, which is not a rule that they have to follow.
Wait.
Yeah.
I did not know that about them.
Well, because they don't check ID. So
I did not know that about the barista. You're talking about the customers, or are you talking about the employees?
Oh, no, the customers
do
not have to be. Yeah, right now, customers do not have to prove that they are adult to go to a bikini barista stand, which is going to be, once you get to some of these controversies, is a little wild. Yeah, as far as I know, they are not classified as adult entertainment still, because that comes with a lot of restrictions. So it's like some people want this, right? Especially in this 2007 period, we're pushing to make these stands adult entertainment zoned, which would require them to have warning signs out front, and advocates for this were saying that's a good thing to have so parents don't accidentally drive through with children. I think that's valid in some ways, but I mean, I think it is valid, actually, I would say. But I also think that some of these espresso stands are pretty open about what they are. Like, I don't think they're trying to hide it. Even when they don't have like an espresso, they're not called Java Jugs or Foxy Lady Espresso. They usually have like a sexy silhouette of a woman on their sign or something like that.
Yeah, they're usually, in my experience, in solo places, but if they're in the middle of a parking lot, that can go sideways real easily.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard of people accidentally pulling up to one and not realizing it was one until they were there.
Right.
So I don't think that it's a bad idea to have like a little warning that this is like probably should be restricted to 18 plus. But it's also to actually get them zoned as adult entertainment would be very restrictive on the stands, and they would have to like ID people. And I think it would basically it might hinder it so much to the point where it wouldn't be possible to have these sort of stands, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's the people who made these stands basically found a hole in the regulatory state and kind of were like, all right, here's our in. So yeah, it would probably kill that business.
So the city of Everett is going to be one that we bring up often in this episode. So in 2017, the city of Everett passed an ordinance that outlined a dress code for all employees of quick service facilities, including barista stands. Is what
it made them have one.
Yeah, so basically this removed the ability of bikini barista stands to function as they were. It required all employees to cover their breasts or pectorals, backs, torsos, buttocks, upper legs, and pubic areas while on the job.
I mean, those are things I would prefer people have covered if they're serving food, but that's just me.
Yeah, the city said that they were needed, these uniforms or standards were needed to combat the dangerous, quote, dangerous and the unlawful conduct, unquote, they believed was inherent to bikini barista stands.
Okay, I wouldn't have gone with that angle. I would have, if I were a regulator, I would have definitely not gone with that angle.
Yeah, so the things that they said were inherent to bikini barista stands were prostitution, flashing, public masturbation, and sexual violence.
Oh my goodness.
Am I going to say that these things have not happened at bikini barista stands? No. Am I going to say that they're inherent to bikini barista stands? Also no.
I mean, they may be thinking it may be easier because they have no clothes on, period, or very few clothes on. So, like, I get that, but I do think that that's kind of discriminatory.
Yeah, so the news on that, though, is that very recently, within the last few years, this law has actually been overturned because the court found that it did not meet standards put forth under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Because people have claimed that the law unfairly targeted and policed women's clothing over men's.
Yep, that's why I was like, it doesn't seem like it's discriminatory. They didn't say all employees. They just were like bikini baristas in particular.
Yeah, so the sentiment in the ruling was that, quote, the restrictions are so detailed they effectively prescribe the clothes to be worn by women in quick service facilities. End of quote. This happened in 2022, that opinion, they said, that overruling. So very recently, actually.
That is pretty recent. The judge said, you can't do that, brother Jebekiah.
People have also said that the law would be hard to enforce and that it would encourage people to police the dress code by assessing the amount of exposed skin for themselves, which is very up to interpretation. There was no, clear guidelines as far as inches of clothing and coverage went. People have argued it, quote, it encourages a humiliating, intrusive, and demoralizing search on women, disempowering them and stripping them of their freedom.
I mean, there are people who don't even like wearing hairnets, and yet the city is going after this particular industry. It does not look good from just the pure legal standpoint.
So the court did say that Everett could establish a dress code of some kind, but it would just have to be more specific. It would need to say how many inches the areas need to be covered by. And it can't be as targeted towards women, I guess.
Yeah, it's an industry regulation, so you have to make it for an industry, not for women in particular.
And other cities, Yakima and Linwood specifically, have passed similar laws to Everett in terms of a dress code enforcement targeted towards bikini barista stands specifically.
I'm guessing the court ruling must have really put a twist on that for them.
Yeah,
too.
I don't know what these cities' ordinance looked like, so they could have been specific enough, or they could be still being challenged. I don't know, because this was just a city of Everett ruling. Yeah. So who knows what's going on over
precedent.
Yeah. So it's actually likely that the ordinance was introduced in direct response to criminal activity that was happening at the time and in the past. So in 2008, the city got more than 40 complaints about bikini barista stands that had women exposing their breasts, genitals, or butts for money.
Oh
Yeah.
boy, only of course it's Everett.
So we're gonna get into some of the
boy.
criminal activity surrounding these. So in this case specifically, allegedly, undercover cops witnessed a whipped cream show where two women sprayed whipped cream on each other and licked it off.
Oh boy.
Another was offered to pay $20 to be flashed. Some would play basketball, which was catching money in their underpants. And the particular stand that was being investigated was close to the roadway and easy to look into from the street. And it happened to be in a spot where traffic was regularly stopped. And apparently, there were instances where the baristas would would strip down and sit on the drive-through window so that they could be in full view of the road.
Do you think that the undercover cops was that a one-time visit? They did all of that? Or do you think that they did that over a long investigation?
For a long investigation.
They definitely did not like what they were seeing. They really hated it.
So for some inside ball for the people who are familiar with Everett, it was located on Broadway.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
I'm assuming, like...
Oh no.
I would say like probably past the community college would be my guess. Somewhere around that area.
Like one of the most busiest intersections in northwestern Washington. Yes. Oh man, this is too much. That's also, like I said, I want to know how this investigation was conducted. There were some very involved police officers.
There's some pictures.
Oh, I know there's probably pictures. I'm talking about the police officers who were...
Oh, we will get into some more things about police officers and Bikini Baristas. Finally, those women, some baristas also allowed customers to touch them, according to the police, for many. And 5 women who were ages 18 to 24 were charged with several counts of prostitution because of this. There are pictures. And I would say that it's probably warranted.
Oh, yeah.
Charges.
How much of that is entrapment, though?
I don't know. I think undercover cop is not entrapment.
I know. You say that. I'm like, that cop they were having a good time doing that investigation.
Oh, probably. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they got like their prudish cops, like, so they wouldn't.
They got the guys who definitely weren't enjoying it.
Yeah, but there's some, I mean, they were like crotchless panties.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
They would like stand, they would get up, their feet up on the window seal and to expose themselves.
Oh, wow.
Lots of flashing going on.
I'm glad this was your research topic.
Basically sex acts with the whipped cream show.
Come on, dude.
Yeah. So, you know.
That's
it was
rough.
not unwarranted, I will say. So at least one of these charges was dropped, though I couldn't find any other official rulings. So I kind of assumed that they were all dropped because I could not find any convictions.
You know that would have gotten an article.
There were so many paper and articles written about, like, they're going to, like, if the Bikini Baristas were taking deals or, like, fighting it. And mostly it was about baristas fighting it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened with that criminally. My assumption is that it got dropped, but I can't tell for sure.
I would assume that it would have gotten dropped just because.
I also think it's kind of sad and gross that these women's photos were released to the public because of the nature of public records request. I think there's some.
That's pretty awful.
Yeah, I think it's kind of gross, but
yeah, that's the problem with. That's like where the law intersects with people, right? Like,
yeah, I don't know if there's ways to prevent that.
Yeah, that's
or
rough.
If they're, anyway, I actually read that the police were actually very reluctant to release those photos because of the explicit nature of them. Reluctant? I said reluctant?
You said reluctant.
Also, I just want a quick side note of this. The owner of that particular stand was convicted of sexually exploiting a minor.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder what the owner was.
And that's because apparently one of the baristas flashing people for tips was 16.
Oh, I knew it was going to happen eventually.
Yeah, and he knew of her age, though he claims he did not know. But he claims he didn't know about the shows. So he admits that he knew of her age, but claims he didn't know about the shows, but she's also dressing up in a bikini and lingerie.
I was going to say, do these particular individuals have W-2s? Because he's going to have to know eventually, right? Like, they have to fill out the paperwork.
Yeah. But wait, there's more. So,
oh, boy.
This was not the last Bikini Barista stand to face allegations of prostitutions at this time. But here's a twist. In a raid of 7 espresso stands that resulted in multiple arrests, there was another, perhaps unexpected, person implicated. A Snohomish County Sheriff, Sergeant Daryl O'Neill, who he was accused of tipping off the baristas about when the police or FBI was watching them, as well as promoting prostitution. That's what he was accused of. Apparently, the FBI caught him hugging baristas but never buying coffee.
Oh, wow.
And he served a year in jail for this.
Oh, he went to jail for Bikini Barista stuff, bro. Imagine losing your job over Bikini Baristas. He gave him a tip. He hinted them off.
Yeah, apparently the FBI was, investigating him. The stand, not clear.
It might be him, because if they thought that he was impeding an investigation,
I think so. I think that's why the FBI was in there. But yeah, so they were investigating a stand to see if there was prostitution happening. And he got in the way.
Imagine the end of like Goodfellas. And they're playing Lila from Eric Clapton, and it's like the sheriff, and it puts under like in the white letters, arrested and convicted on 1 year, charged with 1 year for Bikini Barista protection.
At the end, yeah, freeze framed. And he wasn't the only police officer to have some controversy around Bikini Baristas, because in Kirkland, another officer, Lieutenant Timothy Carpenter, was put on paid leave after he allegedly visited a Bikini Barista stand while driving a city-owned vehicle.
Shocker.
He was then trespassed from the locations he visited because he was acting strange, according to the baristas. Like driving off, claiming he left his wallet at home. As they greeted him, he would speed off after watching them.
This is childish boy behavior.
Touching himself.
Oh, boy.
And being a general creep. So it's not just that he drove up to a Bikini Barista stand in his cop car or his city-owned vehicle. I don't know if it was a marked cop car. I don't think it was. But a city-owned vehicle.
Oh, my goodness.
And, indecent, being a creep.
Yeah, indecent activities.
So not just that he went to one, because I think that might have been a little ridiculous, but...
I mean, you could lose your job for that if you're a city employer, but
you could,
unless you're regulating it, you're there to issue a permit or a
and I think it's in a weird spot because it's technically not considered sex work.
Yeah, it is. It's a business. It's a legitimate.
It's a coffee stand,
right? You're not at a strip club. You're not at you said a place where sex work is being done. But at the same time.
The optics are a little weird, but the point to be
he's a creep.
That he wasn't just suspended because he went to one. He was suspended because he was acting like a creep. And also, may I say that he was put on paid leave.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, and it was he went to 3 locations and harassed the baristas there.
I love that they were he was acting strange. He was
acting erotic and
he was acting erotic and erratic. In this case.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. This is dark.
So on the note of using company vehicles.
Oh boy.
This is sort of an odd thing that happened in the uprising of popularity in Bikini Baristas. There was once a website organized to call boycotts on companies whose employees patronized Bikini Barista stands. So basically, if people were seen in company vehicles driving up to Bikini Barista stands, they would be put on this boycott list, which is crazy.
Imagine being this exhausting.
I think the policing of purity policing, of
morality
police. It's a little crazy.
Yeah, people joke about Iran and all these places where they're these people have morality police. I'm go to any small American town and do something that people don't like. You will find out how quickly you also have a morality police that just don't have official titles.
They were calling for boycotts on the businesses they worked at. They were trying to pressure these businesses into firing people who went to Bikini Barista stands in their company vehicles. Now, should there probably be some sort of company standard about visiting Bikini Barista stands in company gear, or especially company vehicles, if that's not the association you want? Sure. Do I think everyone who does it, if it's not clearly outlined, should be immediately fired and you should boycott the company? Probably not. I don't know.
What? That's not appropriate.
Yeah, so actually these local business owners considered legal action against the site.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what about the First Amendment for the people who own their business? Like they're not supporting anything like evil. Like it's not like they're out there.
It's not illegal,
right? They're like supporting for like the name, insert one bad cause's name, and they're there supporting it.
It's not really sure. I'm not sure whatever came of this. My assumption is that it never went forward with legal action because the site has been taken down, and it seems like it was defunct pretty soon after this. And on their site, they claim they have enough that I used the Wayback Machine. I went on their site for around this time, and they claimed that they got enough positive response from companies that they had put on the boycott list that the boycott was no longer necessary. They said demands were met, but I think it was because of the legal action. If you ask me, that was threatened. Especially if this is like one or two guys, and they're on their crusade against
that site was that site in HTML? Was that like Web 1?
Yeah.
I figured it was.
It was not good.
I was like, they are not getting any new web designers for that page.
The site did have a statement to companies on it, on the boycott list. It said, "We understand that your public image is important to the success of your business." This has a typo. This list is a much for you as it is for anyone else. So as much. Good. I'm pretty sure I copied and pasted that.
Yeah.
If it was my typo, I apologize, but I don't think so. "It is impossible to monitor every hour of your employees' time. However, when they are on your time clock and driving your vehicle, you can exercise control over where your advertising dollars are going. If the name of your company appears on our company boycott list, you can have it immediately removed by sending us a statement in writing that you have informed your employees that they are not to use your company vehicle during business hours to support lewd coffee stands. We will immediately remove your name from our list." So there's that.
So good. It's like a shakedown, but not really, because they're not like materially.
I do have one more that Matt sent me. So as we were sitting here, he wanted me to read off this next one. So I'll do one more. But if we were trying to do all of these, we'd be sitting here forever. And I just want to point out that these sort of things are probably over-reported than they are in other industries because of, the sexual nature to what their service. So I think that these things happen all the time in regular coffee stands and other industries, and they just aren't reported to at the same extent, especially for the time period that this was happening when it was a hot button issue for people.
I'm trying to get the Bikini Baristas to unionize. They need to unionize.
I agree with you. I think that retelling every single instance I could find would kind of be introducing a bias that I don't really like.
And to your point, a lot of these stories I've ever heard were also from like the news. Like they're from like the news channels. They were highly sensationalized. They're very biased, like you were just saying.
Well, I think by the nature of this podcast right now, this episode specifically, is we are talking about like the history and the controversy because that's what's been covered in the news. But I'm sure that there are like well-run, respectable stands of Bikini Baristas out there that are like a joy to work at.
I know that there's coffee stands that are also dangerous to work at. There are, and that's regardless of if they're Bikini Baristas or regular coffee stands.
And that's what I'm saying. Like I don't want to rehash every single instance that has happened at a Bikini Barista stand just because it's happened at a Bikini Barista stand. It makes it newsworthy Because I feel like these things happen at regular coffee stands more than people like to probably admit to themselves. Like, I'm sure people touch themselves at Cruisin' Coffees.
Oh, boy. Yeah, for sure.
Just because they're usually women who run those. And they're usually alone in, like, late, early morning hours where it's still dark.
Yeah, the conditions across the industry could allow for conditions like what you described about that particular stand.
Do I think that what they're wearing introduces more of a risk? Maybe.
And it also can attract a certain client.
Right, which I'll talk about a little bit more because we're about to get into safety after I read this last story. So I just wanted to point that out, that I don't want to cover every single one because I think it's an unfair bias to, like, it paints it as more dangerous and scummy as it is. And I also think that maybe some of this behavior is encouraged because people do see it as, like, inherently scummy business. And so they're like, okay, well, I can get away with it here.
Right.
All right, so let me read this last one. Matt really wanted to share this because it's from Anacortes, which is near where he grew up. And it's from King 5 News that we're reading. And the headline is, Bikini Barista stand owner regrets bullying comments. Police say a possible case of cyberbullying involved an Anacortes coffee stand has now blown up in what could be a felony investigation. Wow. This is just by King 5 staff. There's no writer on that. No byline on it. So, Cedral Woolley, Washington. Let's see. It involves Sips Ahoy, a Bikini Barista stand in Anacortes, and its owner, Megan Calavan, who now fears for her safety. Yikes. Kelly Calavan, who is Megan's father, came out Friday morning to find his house egged and his car dented. What the fuck is going on here?
Yep, I told you. 2
of them hit the door and just up above the window. I'm assuming the eggs. There, they tried to hit her window, he said. I think he's talking about eggs. That's not very clear reporting.
I think he's saying that, not the reporter.
No, but he's, this is a paraphrase.
Oh, okay.
The reporter.
Never mind. Sorry.
So I think they're saying that 2 eggs hit the door and just above the window, and they were trying to hit Megan's window, it seems. And that there's a boot print because they kicked in the door. Inside the home, Megan says it all started a few days before Christmas. When is this? What year is this? This is in 2013 that this happened. So Megan says it started a few days before Christmas when someone posted a nasty comment on the stand's Facebook page. Megan says that she stood up for herself in an immature manner and she responded with a mean comment about the women's weight and had an online back and forth bullying war. King 5 spoke to Jessica Kladek, who accused the barista stand owner of crossing a line wow, this is poorly written. No wonder there's no byline.
Mm-hmm.
When posted a comment telling Claudette to shoot herself. Oh my God,
yeah,
Megan.
This is what happens in the backwoods. Don't I bring you the very best?
I was on your side, Megan. Now I'm not. Well, actually, I don't know if I would be on your side when you made fun of somebody's weight, but, you know. Jessica Claudette accused Megan of telling Jessica to shoot herself.
It's so awful. I don't like laughing at it, but...
What if I was unstable and actually did kill myself? Would it not be okay? Asked Claudette. So people started calling for a boycott on Facebook. Some suggested to put urine or gasoline in the super soaker and burn the coffee stand down. Y'all are insane. We're dealing with.
You see how fast things escalate in the backwoods?
Yeah, Megan said she was scared and that the girls who worked there were scared, understandably. And she lashed back. She regrets doing so. Cedral Woolley police say the dent in the Calavan's car likely elevates this case to a felony investigation. How big of a dent was it?
Probably
felony property damage?
Yeah, probably someone ran up on it.
They advise for everyone involved to stop and take a deep breath before someone gets hurt.
The cops are like, chill out.
Megan says she is sorry for her part and claims she learned an important lesson. Keep my mouth shut, she said. Both Anacortes and Cedral Woolley police departments have been taking calls on the conflict, and Claudette asked all sides to stop. That's interesting. So it actually has nothing to do with being a Bikini Barista
It doesn't.
stand. It's just that it was...
Well, the
These
comments
people.
the comments primarily were the nasty comments are primarily about or initially about it being like a Bikini Barista stand, and
So
then it
some of the
escalated from
vitriol
there.
was probably heightened because
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, and then of course that such beautiful poetry where she goes, maybe you're essentially. The comment was, and I remember this at the time when the newscast on it. It was something to the effect of like, maybe you should like lose some weight so your husband doesn't go to the stand all the time, like to that effect.
Yeah.
And then it escalated from there. That was a big deal back in my area for a little while, for sure.
Well, this is a good segue because I think that has to do with
What, safety? It's worrying about having your stand burned down.
Yeah. So my first thought when I think of Bikini Baristas, which I think, Matt, you were on board with me, is not necessarily controversies or like, is this sex work or is it not?
Yeah, that's not even my first thought.
Like, and if it is sex work, is it a big deal? My question is, how the hell is it safe for these women to be handling hot drinks with so little clothing? Not only sanitation, but physical safety.
Elle and I should be all over that plate.
Do they have an increased burn risk? How do they keep warm in the winter?
Yeah, that's a big one.
These questions, like I said...
Safety of the stand, and this is just coffee in the rural areas overall that operate at late night or later in the day, especially in wintertime. Is the stand safe, period?
Well, early morning, like 4 a.m.
Yeah, when there's no one out there, it could go real bad for you. So those are all thoughts that I always have, is like, you have a bunch of 18-year-old to 20-year-old employees, mostly women, and they're not safe in work conditions and in like safety, literally.
Yeah. So some of the actual work condition stuff, I couldn't actually find anything. Like I said, I would love to interview someone who's actually worked in a stand. So
yeah, that'd be
and
great.
we don't have to just talk about, like OSHA violations.
The steam valves of the cappuccino machine.
We can talk about everything. So if you know somebody or you are somebody and you want to talk to me about it and come on the show, please reach out.
We would love to have you.
Yeah, it would be great. Let's talk about what I did find in terms of like safety, though.
You don't know this, but she has a page in front of her. Or she reading? She literally turned to the next page. It's like, I was like, oh, we're almost done. There's a whole nother page.
Full page of stuff. It won't go that. I promise it will be kind of quick. But so the State Department of Labor Industries regulations do not have safety rules when it comes to baristas, clothing, coffee, espresso stands, or even restaurants. Isn't that fucking wild?
They probably never thought someone was stupid enough to do it.
Yeah,
or crazy enough to do it.
Or my theory, I think, is that they suppose that restaurants will self-regulate because it puts them at risk for being sued.
Yes.
If they have unsafe conditions.
That's also why I'm very confused. There hasn't been any lawsuits out of this. Like, I haven't heard any lawsuits out of this either. Oh, she's like, I got some. Don't worry.
I don't know if there's lawsuits resulting of these, but there's at least one where there could have been a potential lawsuit. Okay. I don't know. Because it's pretty serious. But like, it's wild to think that there is no OSHA violations when it comes, or like the equivalent of an OSHA violation when it comes to restaurants.
Maybe.
Like, isn't that crazy?
So. Yeah, I don't think so.
If it's not regulated?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, huh? Restaurants overall in American economy gets a pass. Like, restaurants are highly unregulated. Sometimes they're family run explicitly, so they don't actually have the same set of rules. And labor laws really don't apply. Like, the restaurant industry has very much lobbied to make sure that there's no protections for workers in that field. Which
is probably why these stands could like initially get traction that they did, because they weren't immediately shut down because of some violation, somewhere.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that's kind of wild.
It's crazy.
So others have, beyond like, what I think is important as far as like environmental safety. A lot of people have raised concerns for physical safety when it comes to customers and the public in general, which Matt mentioned briefly just before this. So Keller, which if you'll remember is the woman who basically started Bikini Barista stands, she made the comparison to a strip club where workers have a bouncer to protect them. In bikini barista stands, they're often working alone, have very little protection, as we saw in some of the controversies I was talking about earlier. And there's a Reddit post I was reading about a stalking incident. This was in Let's Not Meet, Let's Not Meet, and it was verified by the mods as a real story.
No.
Yeah, so it was about a stalking incident a barista dealt with for some years. I don't have time to read the whole story because it's kind of long, but I might record it and release a little bonus somewhere if people are interested.
Sounds good.
And like hearing the story.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, so I think that this point Keller made is really important, that like other sex work industries have protection, like physical protection.
Yeah.
They have bouncers.
Right.
Who can remove people and customers who are behaving inappropriately or dangerously, or if the women feel threatened, they can be, escorted to their cars.
Right.
And, they have more safety measures. And I don't think that's unfounded. And we'll actually see that there are a lot of cases where I think that there should be stronger protections. And again, I will say, I think that's true across the board for coffee stands.
Yeah,
I think that there are some bad business practices, unsafe business practices when it comes to coffee stands. In general, like having women work alone, especially when it's in a rural coffee stand at 4 a.m. when it's dark out, in the winter when it's cold out. There's there's a lot of things that could be better about the industry in general.
Yeah, that could go very badly.
And I do think that, as I was saying before, I think sexual predators, and men who, or I guess not only men, but a lot of these instances where men who are prone to do these things will do it because there's an opportunity to.
Right.
And not necessarily because the women are wearing, the certain type of clothing.
Right.
But I do think that there's like a feeling that they are more entitled to do this behavior maybe.
Right. And that there's permission just because of the venue. As opposed to like, even if it was clothed baristas, I'm not saying that doesn't stop them, but like, let's say there is a person who's out there, and I'm saying he in specific, this is a call out men, that men may find it like more in their mind a sense of permission because they're in bikinis, because they're scantily clad.
They think there's some sort of implied consent.
It's it's literally the guy who thinks every stripper he's ever had with him is his girlfriend. Like she loves him.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of comparisons, and also they probably think like because you are a bikini barista, you will pay, or you can get paid to have sex with them or something.
Jesus.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I think that is where a lot of the sexual violence and specific targeting comes in.
Yeah, the stalking case, actually, I'm pretty sure that that's a common thing just in the coffee industry, the barista industry.
It's a pretty wild story. Basically, it was that a man showed up to a coffee stand right before it opened. How do I sum this up in a very small way? Basically, he left a large sum of money and wanted to purchase the barista sort of as a sex slave.
Yeah. With
that money. And when she went to the police and got police involved, it became he became her stalker.
Yeah. It escalated.
For a long time.
Terrible. So common, but so terrible.
Yeah. So there are attacks against bikini baristas. I don't know if they're perhaps more common than other baristas. It's not really something that's been studied. So I'm just going to give you some examples of when we see bikini baristas be targeted. In Kent in 2018, a barista was attacked in the early morning. Like I said, in the early morning, working alone, when a man jumped into her stand and threatened her with a knife. He demanded she come with him, but she managed to resist as he drug her away.
What?
Yeah. Eventually, she was fighting him the whole time. Eventually, that made him throw her to the ground.
What?
And basically give up.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
A similar instance, which some people have maybe seen on TikTok, which is where I first saw it, but it was actually earlier this year in 2023 in Auburn, this might be releasing in early 2024, but we're still in 2023, just so you know. In Auburn, a man tried to abduct someone by using a zip tie. Did you see this video? Did I show you this?
No, honey.
So he pulls up and he, like, I guess orders something. And when he's going, like, she's reaching out to either take his payment or to give him his coffee. He wraps a zip tie, or, like, you know, throws a zip tie around her wrist and tries to drag her off.
He's acting like one of those people from the crazy, like, kidnapping women videos.
Yeah.
Like, that's but for real, though. Like, he's actually doing the kidnapping in real time. Oh, my gosh.
Well, she was able to resist and, like, fight him off. And he drove away pretty quickly. On him. Yeah, and this man was found pretty fast because he had a recognizable tattoo. And Matt, do you want to guess what that tattoo was?
Was it a tribal print?
No.
Oh.
It's so much stupider.
Oh, I'm trying to think.
Mm-hmm.
Do I know the type of tattoo? Like the archetype?
Yeah, I think so.
Is it a girlfriend with the crossed out, like, arrow through it?
Oh, no, but that's kind of good. No, this is so much more embarrassing for him. It was the word Chevrolet.
Jeez, my God. No, he was going to get caught no matter what.
Yeah, and if you were curious, he was driving a Chevy.
He's a moron.
Yeah.
Well, you know, a lot of people who do these kinds of things are not.
Also, apparently, it was just released from prison. Like, he was released from prison right before doing this.
He was like 5 days out of prison, then he just goes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, so this is probably perhaps the worst incident and doesn't have to do necessarily with criminal activity. It was a death that happened in Everett.
Oh, boy.
Here we are back in Everett. And this happened because a propane space heater exploded.
I was going to say, that sounds like something I was anticipating happening, especially when it's cold.
Yeah, so again, probably not something specific to Bikini Baristas, but perhaps if she was dressed differently, maybe she wouldn't have been as burned as she was.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah. She died there on that.
Mm-hmm. So 26-year-old Courtney Campbell was severely burned and put into a medical coma for several days until she eventually passed.
Oh my
And
goodness.
she suffered burns on nearly 80% of her body.
I cannot. That is so awful.
It's
that is
awful.
One of the worst ways to go.
Also, you're not supposed to use a propane space heater inside, right?
No, it's too. Those are.
Yeah.
I'm right now. I never heard this, and I am just completely lost for words because that is exactly the kind of situation. I mean, regardless of if it was a Bikini Barista or not, those small spaces that they work in and the clash between heat and gas.
Right. Yeah.
It's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, the vapors ignited when she was refilling it.
She was in a bikini, so there was just no protection.
Yeah, and so, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Terrible. That's just terrible.
So do Bikini Baristas have a higher risk of injury on the job other than other coffee stand workers? Maybe.
I would guess.
It's hard to, yeah.
This is why we need to talk to someone who's worked in the field. Worked in the field, now I sound like a real nerd. Worked at a Bikini Barista stand and maybe has some experience, like a years of experience or a year of experience. At least they've seen some stuff. Because I know people who've worked in coffee. We know several people who've worked in coffee, and there's injuries all the time in that. So.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I had. Like, it's hard to say whether the burn risk is higher because there's no measured data or incidents or OSHA violations as far as I can
And no one's
find,
reporting that probably either, if we're being real.
Yeah, so I'd love to interview someone about it. I would love if there was some sort of studies about Bikini Baristas where I can get, like, synthesized data. I don't know. Maybe there's some sociology people in
U.S. Department of Labor. Get on it. We need studies. What the hell's going on?
Some sociologists, some anthropologists. I don't know, but I feel like this could be a rich field for you to study, like, and answer some questions, like, especially when it comes to physical safety. Like, is there a higher rate of violence against these than other coffee stands,
right.
Or are we just focusing on them,
right? Because
of this. Is there a higher probability for sex trafficking out of these stands, especially because they're young women,
Yeah, I'm surprised there's no real data on it. Because it's been since 2000, like you said, 2007.
Yeah, quite a while.
It's been a while, and they have really nothing on it.
And again, in my outline here, I just mention again that like coffee stands are easy targets in general, not just because they're bikini baristas.
A lot of robberies at coffee stands in period in this area.
Yeah.
We didn't want to try to turn this into a true crime podcast or anything.
Yeah.
We're not trying to do that. But there are some topics that really intersect with, safety, crime, and violence like this.
Yeah, and there probably will. We have too much true crime history in Washington to not at some point cover some of those things, but
we're going to definitely touch on that.
Yeah. My conclusion is this. Yes, there's probably measures that can be taken to increase the safety of baristas, regardless of if they're bikini baristas or standard baristas. And I hope that there's not too many workplace injuries, or if there is, they're on par with other baristas, because I know standard baristas also get burned all the time at their job.
Right,
or regular. I don't know about all the time, but like enough.
A bit.
To like probably have at least one scar somewhere.
What this podcast has taught me, besides all the sad stuff, is that one, ladies, get your money. That's number one. Number two, there is a giant gap for male bikini baristas.
That's true. I was going to say, any final thoughts? But I think that is the final
That's
thought.
my final thought. I'm about to open up a Chippendales version of
a gap in the market.
I know. Hey, man, freer the markets, the freer the people. Let's go.
What we got to do is like find the gayest city in Washington. Because I feel like gay men are very likely to go to that. And also you probably get some straight women too, but
for sure you would get some straight women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put it on Capitol Hill.
Trademark. This is our business idea. You cannot take it.
I have something that you can take it. I have no interest in opening
Michaela says she doesn't, but now I'm like, this
coffee.
is easy money. I could easily get this going. I know plenty of people's parking lots I can get this into.
Yeah, another thing that I would be maybe interested in looking into, it's a little hard to find in depth. I would have to take a lot more time. And as I said, there's so much that I think we've been talking for an hour, right?
Yeah.
We've been talking for an hour already and just, like scratching the surface on these things. It'd be interesting to see like if they're banned in some places, because I have never seen one in Whatcom County, but there's so many in Skagit and Snohomish County. Right. I don't know why that is. You know. Anyway, there's so much more to be talked about in this.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's so much. Yeah, it's a very conspicuous business. Everyone sees them when you see them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's not much information about them, which I find is very interesting. So,
yeah.
Well, we'll be searching for that interview, and if we can get one, you will all find out soon.
You'll get a bonus. A Bikini Baristas Part 2, perhaps, if we can manage it.
Bonus content.
Yeah. I will also leave the link to that Reddit story in the show notes if you would like to go see it for yourself. And I think I will probably record like a bonus 10-minute reading of the Let's Not Meet post. Just in case you don't want to go and search it for yourself. I'll record one. Yeah, so that's it for me. Do you know what you're talking about next week, Matt? Do you have something on the docket, or are you playing it by ear still?
It's going to be a pretty, it's another bleak one.
Always for you.
But there might be a little bit of history in this one, going back to even the 1800s. So, I'm hoping to be able to get it all put together. But it's mostly about, Bellingham's, history with immigration. That looms large in our city's history here, that I really would like to get into. So, hopefully that's the topic, but it could change, like always. All the topics are not guaranteed.
All right, sounds good. So, Until next time, thank you for listening. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of What the Washington. If you enjoyed this episode and you've made it this far, please share this with a friend and leave us a rating on the podcast platform of your choice. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye.